Grabbing some stewed tomato sauce from the pantry shelf, a jar of crushed tomatoes, and I'll have to go to my overflow pantry downstairs and restock my tomato paste. I'm going to grab a jar of that, as well as I've got some restocking to do. It definitely looks like I'm working through stuff. I just need a jar of strained tomato, which is like a tomato puree, tomato sauce. So I am making spaghetti for dinner. Sometimes you just want something really quick. Sometimes it needs to be easy. Tonight's dinner just needs to be a no-brainer. I could make spaghetti in my sleep if I needed to. It's really rather quick too. I mean, it's super simple because I kind of want to focus on making a dessert tonight as well, which is not something I typically do on a Tuesday night. I made, what was that called? The French butter cake the other day. We ate through that in like 2 days. It's really good. So I'm using a jar of the apples that I have on my shelf that have been here for eternity. I can't make a pie filling from it. I used the wrong apples, so I'm just gonna make a dump cake, and it will be like an apple sauce type of a dump cake. Let's see how that turns out. One of my goals when I first started canning several years ago was to start providing on my shelf my own home canned foods. And I do feel rather successful in that goal in many ways. One of the things I was a little hesitant on was my own spaghetti sauce. I've not been one to just make my own sauce from scratch. I had it in my mind that I didn't like it. Don't know why. So I kind of never really made my own from scratch. And I did attempt to can my own spaghetti sauce, which I have shared with you that although the sauce itself would probably be good, I would not add meat to it the next time I would do it that way. Out of necessity, one day I needed spaghetti sauce, but I didn't have any more from the store, and I thought, you know what, let's just do it. Let's just make our own. I loved it. It was so good. It was quick, it was simple, and that's all that I really want. Quick, simple, and just few ingredients. From the freezer that I'm trying to work out of, I had a pound of ground bison. I got this from Butcher Box. I couldn't tell you when, but it certainly needs to be eaten through. So we're going to ground up a pound of that with some onions. Now, true Italians, go ahead and look the other way, because this may or may not make you happy. I don't know, we'll see. So to my pot here, I'm going to get that going with just a little bit of olive oil. I opted to cook my onions with the meat. Otherwise, I would usually start off by just sauteing some of my onions. I'm gonna let that warm through. I don't have any fresh garlic. I don't even have any garlic right now, and I don't really care to use my pickled garlic in a dish like this, so I do have garlic paste. I'm just gonna use a little bit of that. Get all of my jars open. My favorite part about making my own sauce, because I do home can, is I generally can pull off a few jars to get those jars off my shelf. Number one goal when you're a home canner is to use what you've preserved. And so as much as it feels good to get those shelves loaded up at the end of the harvest season, it feels so good. I love it more when I can see those shelves being emptied. It really just feels so good knowing I'm working through all of the hard work that we put in the prior months. I'm gonna go a little bit of garlic down here. I'm just gonna start dumping in our ingredients. Crushed tomatoes, stewed tomato sauce. It's got wonderful flavor in there, onions and peppers. Strained tomatoes, or of course, like I said, you can just use a tomato puree or tomato sauce. This helps to give it that silky, smooth consistency. The tomato paste that I use from Azure is really thin in my opinion. So if you're using a container, the tin container, you might only need half because it's so much thicker. But I use the whole jar for two reasons. One, because again, it's really thin. I mean, to me, it's almost like a puree. Rather than a paste. So I use it the whole jar because of that, but I also use the whole jar because nothing irritates me more than having half of a jar of something that I then have to put in the freezer. You know, I take it from my pantry shelf wanting to get rid of it. The last thing I want to do is then having to go store it again. So I just use the whole thing. I use a spaghetti seasoning blend. Again, this is from Azure, and this just really has all of those beautiful spaghetti seasonings in here. I start with just a couple tablespoons. You know, you can add a little bit more later on if you need it. We'll add some salt. And then towards the end, I might add a pinch or two, like literally a teaspoon, maybe 2 teaspoons of sugar. I have to be really careful with the acid content. And so I do have to add a little bit of sugar, but not much. It really does help to bring it down some. I've got the sauce at a simmer. I'm getting my water to a boil so I can cook the noodles. I transferred the meat into the same pot as the sauce, so that's all simmered together. So I'm going to work on this dump cake. I'm taking this jar of apples. Beautiful seal, even though it's been many years since I've canned this. I'm just going to, it smells really good, pour my apples down here. It's essentially apples in like somewhat of a heavy syrup. This one was not intended to be an apple pie filling. I thought maybe I could turn it into a pie, open the jar, and add my thickener to it. And of course it just didn't work out because I can like mush this into applesauce if I wanted to. I'm going to use a jar of my apple butter. Oy. This is going to really add some beautiful flavor, and it kind of is more of like a fall type of a meal, but you know what? Sometimes I let my pantry shelves dictate what we're going to have, and I definitely have lots of apple butter to still work through. And the recipe I'm using originally calls for a spice cake, which I don't have, so I figured that apple butter would really lend that wonderful spice flavor. Okay, now that it looks like pretty much a big brown mess, careful. I have dehydrated apples that I've bought from Azure, a huge box of them, I don't know, maybe a year and a half ago. And I'm just going to lay them out in here. This is going to help to soak up quite a bit of that extra liquid that was in the apple jar. So, and then it'll help us kind of have an actual bite of apple within there as well. Not gonna do too many because I do wanna make sure they actually hydrate well. And push them down in there. Oftentimes in my kind of world, dehydrated apples can kind of be seen as like this is just a snack with exactly how it is. And although we do enjoy snacking on them this way, and I had a foster son who absolutely adored snacking on these, they can still be cooked with. In fact, I've made an entire pie out of nothing but dehydrated apples. So if anyone's interested in seeing that, let me know. And next time I'll show you how I make a pie. All right, this will be plenty. When you dehydrate apples, whether you do them yourself or like when you purchase them, they're more like leathery. So if you want actual apple chips, you have to bake those in the oven at a really low temperature for quite a while, because my foster son really enjoyed apple chips as well. We had him on a really particular type of diet for several reasons actually, and so we really were able to replace some maybe not so good food choices with some others, and he adored the apple chips that way. Okay, speaking of being on a diet and being healthy, let's add some caramel sauce over the top. This won't exactly drizzle because my pantry's kept pretty cool. And it's been pretty cool in the house lately too. The weather's been so wonky. It's like one day it's in the 60s, the next day it's in the 30s. You know how it is, especially if you're up north like me. It's gonna be really nice here these next several days, and then it's going to snow on Monday. But that's how April is in Ohio. Okay, I'm only gonna use about half of it maybe. I don't want it to, I actually personally don't love caramel. I like it to a degree, but we'll just do that. Now we take our cake mix. This is a white cake mix. Again, you can use a spice cake, you can use yellow cake mix. Need scissors. Give that pasta a stir every now and again. You don't want that to scorch. Okay, so with your cake mix, you're literally just going to dump it over the top, you know, as evenly as you can. So with today's dinner and dessert, I managed to get 1, 2, 4 jars out of my pantry. I love that so much, and I'm really happy that I'm really trying to do some research and figure out how to use some of those canned fruits that I just really have had such a hard time using up. Something tells me my family isn't going to complain on how I'm using it today. I'll probably take a little bit into work too for my friends there. Okay, so get that out. You don't want to pat down. You don't want to mix. If you're not familiar with what a dump cake is, essentially in the name, it's just dumping and, you know, putting it in the oven. So do not mix. Now we're going to get butter, 12 tablespoons, and I'm going to pretty much do 1 tablespoon increments and just lay them here across the top of the cake. This is a wonderful option as well for a potluck, if you need to bring something in for work, whatever the case may be. You can do this with all different sorts of pie fillings too. I've made a peach pie dump cake. You could do apple. Well, we're doing apple. You could do cherry. Pretty much do anything, quite honestly. There you have it. That's all you do. The oven will do the rest of the work, and it'll be magic when I come and take it out, and I will show you the final product. So 60 minutes is what the recipe said, but I actually cooked it for 70 minutes, and I'm gonna let it sit and cool down completely before dishing up. Still pretty warm, which I think is fantastic since that caramel sauce is in there. So, and I probably look like a train wreck, but just ignore that. We were herding in ducks to their new home. And ducks are scared of everything, so you really have to chase them down. Okay, there's an example of one of the dehydrated apples that we put in there. So good. Oh my gosh. Some vanilla ice cream would be phenomenal with this. I don't have any, but I will be getting some tomorrow, I think. I hope you enjoy this, and I'll see you next time I'm in my kitchen.